Here's the bad guy. Next morning, good guy finds his tire flat and useless, right? Not anymore. That's this week on Motoring 98.
TSN's Motoring 98 is brought to you by Quaker State. The big Q stands for quality, always has, always will, and Midas for new, longer-lasting, performance-friction carbon metallic brake pads.
Believe it or not, I am driving with two completely flat front tires. These are the new Goodyear's extended mobility tires. They come equipped on this new Corvette as well as the Plymouth Prowler. Now they are designed to run flat. Now the question we're asking this week is, how do they work and do they spell the end of the spare tire? Changing a flat tire is not a lot of fun. In fact, it can also be a dangerous situation. Well, imagine never having to change a flat tire again. Although the technology has been around for years, the extended mobility tire will soon be available to the mass market. The new Corvette and the Plymouth Prowler are now both sold with the EMT tire and no spare. But how does it work?
I mean, everybody knows that a tire has air in it. And you have to think about, with the air, that is what holds the vehicle up off the road, okay? When you start taking the air out, and many of you have seen what happens, unfortunately, when you have a total loss of air and the tire starts to come apart because you're running the tire down on the wheel and the road surface and it pinches it off. But now with what we've been able to do with our EMT technology is, yes, the air comes out of the tire. It starts to compress, but it never totally compresses down where the tread piece comes down and touches the wheel and then starts to more or less abrade away. The internal pieces of this new technology, the support systems inside the tire, actually keep it from touching on itself and allows you to have the mobility you need to travel the distances to, perform service or whatever you need to do. You do need the low pressure warning system to let you know that you do have the reduced inflation pressure, and that in itself is a major benefit. We look at a range of 50 miles at 55 miles an hour as what we think the consumer really needs in a safe environment.
This is actually, for a change, really a big story, because bringing a run-flat tire down to the family car level is pretty significant. I've not been impressed in the past when it was available on low-profile tires like the Corvette, because there the engineering is dead easy. But to do it now on a family car where you have to have a decent ride quality when the tire has air in it, to overcome that engineering difficulty, that's a major breakthrough.
Really, the only thing that really makes you aware of the fact that you have a flat at this point on the cars that we tested today was the fact that you could hear that sickening thud, thud, thud. But other than that, it handled very, very well, and I felt very comfortable driving any one of the number of cars that they had today, that it was going to keep me on the road and it wasn't going to be presenting me with a problem.
I don't think you're going to talk many people out of their spare tire today. I don't think the spare tire is leaving. I'm not going to take one out of my vehicle today. I mean, my wife or other folks wouldn't think, what's wrong with you? Yet I know you have the security to do that. So the whole thing is more around security. Prowler, Corvette, no spare tire. You've got to look hard for that one. So there's a real vote of confidence there from that select group of customers. But the mass market, they're not going to throw their spare tire away today.
The sensor is, if you're buying two tires, the sensor is the cost of almost two tires. And most replacement market tires are bought usually in pairs. They're rarely bought four at a time for family cars. So someone would say, I'll buy two tires. Yes, I'm willing to pay a premium of 20% for the safety factor. And then the dealer will tell them, now you need to spend as much again for that to get the sensor to make these work. And I think that will be the end of the sale right there for a significant number of people.
This is not really a new tire. This is not just another tire. This is a revolution in tire technology. It's an invention, and like every invention, it takes time for it to really take hold. And in a different way, this is similar to the PC or this cellular phone. So it's going to take a few years, but we think it's a great opportunity for the consumers, and we think it's a great opportunity for our company.
The spare tire, can we really live without them? It's coming up later on Kenzie's Corner.
You know, it's 10 years and some 250 test drives ago that I first wore this shirt. Well, I dragged it out of the bottom drawer to commemorate our 10th anniversary. Now, to kick things off, we have a real treat as we take a look at Ferrari's 550 Maranello.
The suspension design features double wishbones and coil springs at all four corners and features normal and sport modes. The system varies the amount of damping according to what the driver is doing. A number of different inputs result in 4 small electric motors, altering the valving and therefore the amount of damping control. To say the system is effective is an understatement. Body roll is non-existent, understeer is benign, and nosedive, even under heavy braking, does not enter the picture. Factor in the tyres, a mammoth set of 255 40-18s up front and 295 35-18s in back, and it takes a lot to unsettle the car, at least on dry tarmac. As a bonus, the ride comfort is remarkably civilized and, given the tenacious handling characteristics, surprisingly comfortable. The 550 also features a traction control system that is linked to the 2 different suspension settings. In the normal mode, the traction control intervenes the instant it detects wheel slippage. The sport mode gives the driver a lot more latitude before limiting power. You can, of course, turn the system off, but I warn you, you do so at your own peril. The traction control system is mandated by the engine and the extreme power it delivers. The 5.5-litre V12 plunks no less than 485 horsepower and 409 pounds-feet of torque down onto the tarmac. Mash the loud pedal with enthusiasm and hang on, because 0 to 100 takes but 4.2 seconds and the top speed is a breathtaking 199 mile an hour or 320 kilometers an hour. Quick either way you look at it. Matched with the engine is a heavy-duty rear-mounted 6-speed manual gearbox that also contains the final drive. Now, the rear mount position helps enormously with the overall weight distribution. The shifts themselves must be deliberate and are, true to form, rather awkward. The saving grace, however, is that the clutch, while a little heavy, is smooth and progressive and far from temperamental. So far, so good. However, what makes the powertrain so special is its flexibility and the very broad nature of the power curve. Indeed, it is entirely possible to accelerate from 80 to 280 kilometers an hour in 6th gear. Now, trust me, I speak from first-hand experience.
You know, the Maranello is as remarkable for what it doesn't have as what it does, and what it doesn't have is one of those gaudy trademark spoilers. All you will find is this very discreet ridge. Now, it was through a lot of wind tunnel testing that Ferrari managed to get the body lines and the underbody to generate almost 0 lift at this car's top speed of 199 miles an hour. The other thing you won't find, of course, trunk space.
Inside, the bland and rather boring nondescript interior of the F355 is replaced by a design that is both attractive and highly functional. All of the primary controls are easily accessed and feature a very positive detent. While the latter is somewhat difficult to quantify in the overall scheme of things, it does give the car a user-friendly feel. The seats are of the deep dish variety, featuring large base and backrest bolsters, and they are entirely comfortable. The only disaster is the radio. While the sound is all it should be, the buttons are minuscule and impossible to operate without looking at them. Now, that's a definite no-no given the gusto.
Well, all good things come to an end, and so is this test drive. The 550 is fast, fun, and it handles like you-know-what sticks to a blanket when you go around corners. $290,000 isn't cheap, but then again, you only live once. it's time to update our long-term Elantra. Now, after hearing me complain about the transmission's penchant for holding third gear, Hyundai phoned to see if they could get the car back to check out the problem. Well, a couple of weeks later and a few adjustments later, we get the car back. Now, while there is a slight improvement, the transmission still likes to hold on to third gear far too long. That aside, the Elantra has given us stellar service, pun intended. It cruises the highway in a quiet and efficient manner, it handles twisty blacktop very well, and in general is a very easy car to live with. On our next update, we'll take a look at the Elantra's forte, and that simply is economy.
When visiting Sweden, it shouldn't come as a surprise that the majority of cars on the road are Saabs and Volvos, since both are Swedish companies. But instead of trying to make them feel welcome, Sweden's National Road Administration has both car makers seeing red over the administration's Green Plan. Effective in January of 1998, all cars must meet a certain weight and get at least 28 miles per gallon to be considered for government fleet use. No Saabs and only one Volvo, a Dutch-built S40, meet the new standards. Saab is threatening to pull out of Sweden if the rules take effect.
Our Midas tip of the week concerns spare tires. In spite of the talk of extended mobility or run-flat tires, a spare tire is a fact of life for most motorists. Now, if your vehicle happens to be a pickup, sport utility, or van, there's a real good chance that you've got a spare tire hung underneath the back of the vehicle. That's a handy position for it for those kind of vehicles, but it leaves it vulnerable to theft, and you don't want to find out the hard way when you need your spare most that somebody swiped it. Now, here's a handy little accessory that you can buy. This one happened to come from a GM car dealer. They sell this for $19, and it's a piece of cable protected with vinyl with a couple of loops at the end, and they give you a lock with it that's pretty well completely weatherproof. It's got a little plastic or rubber cap that snaps over it to keep salt and dirt out of it and stop it from freezing in the winter. You can open it up and lock the two ends of this loop together after you've passed the cable around the spare tire and the frame of your vehicle. And the secondary benefit of this is the fact that on this type of a vehicle, with the cable that lowers the tire, when it gets 8 or 10 years old, in many cases the cable gets rusty enough that it could drop the tire on the road. An accessory like this will not only protect it from theft, but it's a backup so that you don't drop that tire in the front of another motorist on the highway. That's your Midas tip of the week.
A portion of Motoring 98 is brought to you by the Solder Seal Gunk family of automotive products, makers of Puncture Seal Gold and Liquid Wrench.
It was hurtin' music the band was playing, but for Mercedes-Benz it's been nothing but good old Southern hospitality since it opened its first North American plant in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. This is home to the Mercedes M-Class all-activity vehicle. The M-Class delivers excellent on-road handling with a 3.2-liter V6 providing 215 horses at 233 pounds-feet of torque. Although this is Mercedes' first venture into off-roading, the M-Class was extremely capable over rocks and mud. Taking the credit is an all-new, full-time four-wheel drive with a four-wheel electronic traction system. Now, the M-Class is brand new from the ground up, but it's entering a hot and well-established sport utility market.
I'd like to take you back about 3.5 years when we found out that we were going to enter this market, and we had to do a lot of investigations, a lot of studying because we were not familiar with this market. And we knew at that point that this vehicle would fit in the higher end, in the premium market of the sport utility segment. So we believe that there's a spot for us in there.
It might seem like a gamble, but given the way the market is going with sport utilities, I think it's probably a pretty safe bet. I think there may be improvements. There is, I believe, a bigger engine coming along, perhaps some styling improvements. It's not a really outstanding styling job in my opinion, but everything else seems to be pretty good.
Who should be worried? Ford? GM?
I would say Land Rover, a luxury car maker, and in the same class as these guys. I think it'll take sales away from them. They're offering a combination of luxury, prestige, and the off-road capability. The domestics could be worried, but I think that the luxury ones will be the ones that are most affected.
But would-be M-Class customers could be singing their own hurtin' song, since Mercedes has already sold out its first shipment of 600 vehicles in Canada, and there's also a rumor that 2,200 units allocated for Canada for 1998 are already sold out.
They are. The larger part of the production for next year is sold out. We are actively working on getting additional volume to hopefully increase this allocation for next year.
You know, with most vehicles now featuring a donut-sized tire for their spare, space is not the issue it used to be, unless you're silly enough to buy a sport utility like this Grand Cherokee that features a full-size spare that takes up about 30% of your luggage space. In that case, Goodyear's new extended mobility tire may be just for you because it will eliminate that fifth wheel. Now, I wonder what Bill Gardiner thinks of this new tire. I mean, I'm sure Bill has made millions of dollars changing flats and putting on the spare tire. Haven't you, Bill?
Well, Brad, a couple of things. First of all, I want to know where my 98 t-shirt is. And secondly, I haven't got rich changing tires. I've changed a lot of tires on the side of a lot of highways for people. Many of our viewers have met me that way, and I haven't taken a dime for doing it. And as a matter of fact, I've gotten some pretty spirited arguments with people of trying to stuff $10 bills in my pocket. And thirdly, concerning extended mobility or run flat tires, they certainly have a place in sports cars or vehicles that have large diameter or really wide tires. If you're trying to make that vehicle sleek, where do you physically leave the room to store a big tire like that after you've changed a flat? It's pretty tough. So a run flat or extended mobility tire certainly has a place there. But in a mainstream vehicle, certainly a lot of passenger cars that have a space saver tire like this, as goofy as it may look to some of you, if it's used properly, it works well. Now, a couple of things that have struck me when I've stopped on the side of the road to change tires for people is, first of all, how precarious some of their positions are when they stop the vehicle. They'll stop the vehicle on the side of the road without enough clearance to the rest of the traffic when they could have driven the vehicle further out of harm's way. That's one thing you really want to keep in mind. If you do have a tire deflate or go flat at highway speeds, in all likelihood, it's ruined before you get to the side of the road. So get the vehicle speed down as low as you can and get it under control and get it safely well off to the side of the road. And if you have to, drive the thing for as long as you have to at the side of the road, very slowly with the four-ways on, until you reach a place where there's enough room to safely change that tire. Now, on a space saver tire, you'll notice that it's written clearly on the side that it's for temporary use only. Well, here's one that I took off somebody's car on the road, and they'd driven it for 4 or 5 months with the spare on until they completely wore through it and wore a hole in it, and it deflated. I mean, it's hard to believe, but somebody was driving on this tire until it actually let go. Now here's a full-size tire that was on the rear of a Mercury Sable. The outer groove on this tire is almost full tread depth, but the vehicle had some suspension damage in the rear that caused extreme wear on the inside of the tire. You can see what it did to the tire. It wore it right through the steel belts. And I followed this vehicle in the dark, and believe it or not, there were sparks coming off this in the dark. I'd never seen that before. But it gives you an idea of how the bodywork and the bodywork on the rear of a Mercury Sable almost cuts your view off of the tire. The motorists didn't know they were driving on a tire that was that bad. And the second thing, make sure you're doing a regular inspection of the tires that are on your vehicle, whether it's the space saver tire you just put on or your regular road wheels. Know the condition of those tires so you don't get yourself in a position like this if you don't have to. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardiner for Motoring 98.
I'm from Volkswagen, and I've got a music problem.
I'm Ronnie. I'm Johnny. You got a problem. We got a song.
I thought perhaps a theme song.
We did car gigs, yeah.
Improvement number 1. The compression ratio has been optimized through dish pistons.
Dish pistons optimized compression ratio.
Oh, yes, I know. Oh.
You got anything else?
Improvement number 2, increased air inlet groupings. Number 18, an advanced manifold preheating system. Finally, improvement number 29, floating bearings for most mounting points. Gentlemen, the most improved Volkswagen ever.
Kid, 5,000 canaries whistling the bluebird of happiness at the Hollywood Bowl couldn't help you.
couple of years ago, I bought a 1977 American Motors Hornet. Beautiful car, original condition. I was quite surprised to find in the back of it 2 spare fan belts and 2 spare rad hoses. You know, in the old days, a lot of people used to carry spare parts, plugs, condenser, points. Anybody remember what those were? Today's new cars are so reliable, we don't bother anymore. Besides, who would know how to fix them? The only remnant of those good old days is a spare tire. Every car has a spare tire, right? Well, last time your car had a flat, did you in fact have a spare in the back of the car? Did it have air in it? Did you have a jack that you could get the car off the ground, or a lug wrench that actually fit the wheel nuts? And even if you did have all those things, chances are the tire is not going to match the other 3 that are on the car, and that's not optimum from a safety perspective, braking and handling. In today's new cars, well, most of them have those Mickey Mouse little spares that look like something off your kid's tricycle. I'm not sure I want to trust those very far. Now, is it possible we could give up spare tires altogether? I mean, I carry around a can of puncture seal for emergencies, and Goodyear's just come out with a tire that even if it blows out, you can ride home on the sidewalls. Then you can get to a tire store and get a proper tire put on your car. The question is, are we psychologically addicted to the crutch of a spare tire? Can we teach old dogs new tricks? All I can say is, arf, arf. And, oh, by the way, Brad, when are we going to get the Motoring 98 shirts? I'm Jim Kenzie.
You know, price aside, the reaction to Goodyear's new extended mobility tire has been pretty positive by most of the journalists here. Although I got to admit to you, I have heard a bit of grumbling. Someone said, there goes the longest running excuse for being late for work. So there you go. That's it for now. Make sure you join us next week as we continue to bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
These things are taxi cabs, you know, in racing terms they are taxi cabs, and they don't fit. Sure, you still get great racing. I would never say anything except this is a fabulous show, but at the same time this is Indianapolis, this is the Brickyard.
TSN's Motoring 98 has been brought to you by Quaker State. The big Q stands for quality, always has, always will, and Midas for new, longer-lasting performance friction carbon metallic brake pads.